If you're looking to get into the Pokemon trading card game, the competitive side in particular, League Battle decks are the best thing you can buy. You are getting a competitive level deck right out of the box, and this newest one that's coming out soon is quite possibly the best one we've ever seen. I'm Jet from InThirdPerson.com. Make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and let's talk about this latest reveal of the Charizard EX League Battle deck. We will talk about price, release date, we will analyze the deck list, we'll talk about some of the cards you can put in there to upgrade it, and even show a couple of examples of top Charizard decks from the most recent World Championships. The Charizard EX League Battle deck will be released on November 15th, 2024, and it's going to be $29.99 US retail price. This is an absolutely phenomenal value for what you're getting here. And besides the 60 card deck, you're also getting 6 damage counter dice, 1 coin flip die for heads or tails, 2 condition markers for burn and poison, 1 deck box, 1 accessory box, 1 strategy sheet, and 1 code card to play the deck online. And I've got some product shots here. Shout outs to PokeBeach for these. And you'll notice on the front, we've got 3 Charizard EX, which is the right amount for a competitive Charizard deck. We've got 2 copies of Pidgeot EX over here in the top and the bottom left-hand side. That's the right amount of Pidgeots for a competitive Charizard deck. And oh, this pink card right here is a massive win for the deck because it is Prime Catcher. They're one of the big questions about League Battle decks in this new world is, are we going to get A-Specs now in these products? Because A-Specs are now a thing in the standard format. And the answer is yes. And not only did they choose an A-Spec, they chose the best A-Spec. Prime Catcher is a phenomenal card that lets you gust your opponent's bench Pokemon into the active, and then you can move one of your bench Pokemon into the active. Can really help you score those big KOs that you need to win the game. And even though there are a ton of great A-Specs in the game right now and more coming, Prime Catcher is currently the best one and will probably stay the best A-Spec going forward. And if there's going to be other ones, I think it's going to be hard to top Prime Catcher as the A-Spec to get. And it's so good that it's actually a really expensive card to get in the open market right now. At the time of this recording, on August the 30th, so dating it a little bit here, this card goes for $28. So basically, you could buy this card by itself right now, or you can get the entire Charizard deck. And just for that reason alone, this is a phenomenal value. Like, I already have a Charizard deck built out. I haven't fully upgraded it to the current format, but I will probably still buy this League Battle deck because Prime Catcher is a card that is really hard to find. It's really expensive, and if I can get a whole bunch of other great cards, like a whole Charizard deck, like, yeah, I'm personally going to do that as well. But if you don't have a competitive deck yet, the value here is absolutely insane. Let's look at the back of the box here, and we can see some of the feature Pokemon in the League Battle deck right in the middle there. You can see some of the things like the deck box and some of the accessories that come with the deck. And we also see on this side here the deck list. Now, don't worry, I know the font is a little small here. We're actually going to go through this card by card with all the pictures and stuff, so don't worry about that. Let's move on to, and yeah, here's a look at some of the accessories in greater detail. It's worth noting that the deck box is only going to hold the cards unsleeved, so you're not getting something like a full big box like this where it can hold sleeve cards. Charizard as the next League Battle deck is a phenomenal, if not the perfect choice based on where the game is right now. It is a top tier deck. Here's the limitless online tier list. Well, it's the online usage for the decks in the Shrouded Fable format, and Charizard Pidgeot is the #1 deck in terms of meta share. It's also winning at a pretty high clip at 48.05%. Regidrago's very much giving it a run for its money, but Charizard has been an incredibly strong deck and has been one of, if not the best deck in the game for the last year. Over in Japan, where they are in their Stellar Crown format, Charizard's still considered an S tier deck, and even at the World Championships. Now, it did kind of disappoint A little bit, in the sense that Charizard did not get top 8 when it was considered to be one of the best decks in the game, but Tord still got 10th place with Charizard just outside that top 8. So I think Tord was short by like 1 point getting into top 8. So had he gotten one more point, anything could have happened at that point. Regardless of how you slice it, Charizard is one of the strongest decks right now, and it probably will continue to be one of the strongest decks for the foreseeable future. And because of that, I think that Charizard is a fantastic pick for a League Battle deck. Here is a look at the deck list for the League Battle deck. You can see a lot of the staple cards you would find in a Charizard deck in there. The Charizard EX, the Pidgeot, Buddy-Buddy Poffin is a fantastic addition as well. There are also some notable subtractions, or like cards missing from this. If you've seen a competitive Charizard list in this 2024 rotation format, cards like a Lumineon and a Rotom, those are not in here, and Radiant Charizard are some of the big ones off the top of my head. Those are not here because this is a product that has to be in store shelves past the 2025 rotation. So cards like Rotom, Lumineon, Radiant Charizard, and a couple of others are going to be out of the format in a couple of months. And because of that, this list is tuned a little more for a post-rotation format, which I think is fine. And at a glance, this list still looks incredibly strong. Charizard EX is the star of the deck. It is our primary attacker. It has a ton of HP at 330. Its ability lets it power itself up, and its attack swings for insane damage for only 2 fire energy. You start at 180 damage, and you do 30 more damage for each prize your opponent's taken. So if they've taken 5 prizes, you are swinging for 330 damage and can pretty much one-hit KO anything in the game. Since its release, Charizard EX has arguably been the best attacker in the game, and I don't see that changing anytime soon. At the very least, Charizard is going to be one of the best attackers going forward, and has been for the last year. Charmeleon is usually a one-of in Charizard decks, but we have 3 copies of it here, and we have the version with Flare Veil, which is a really nice ability that prevents all effects of attacks, so stuff like Greninja's Moonlight Shuriken won't be able to hit it, nor will Sableye, Lost Mine, or Dragapult's Phantom Dive damage counters, which is really nice. However, its attack is kind of not great. 2 fire energy for 50 damage is a bit short of the big thing you'd want to hit with a Charmeleon, which is the Mimikyu, and otherwise this deck doesn't really have, it kind of has an answer for Mimikyu, but we'll get to that in a sec. The other Charmeleon, which not many people are playing anymore, the Fire Blast one will knock out a Mimikyu, though it does take 3 fire energy. Charizard EX can power that up, but it's a little annoying to go up there. But sometimes when you need to knock out a Mimikyu and you don't have an answer, this Charmeleon can fit the bill. Generally speaking, though, we're only running 1 copy of the 90 HP Charmeleon in our competitive decks. There are a bunch of good Charmanders in the format right now, but I'm not mad at this one. At the very least, this Charmander has 70 HP, which is the magic number to get out of Dragapult Phantom Dive range, where they drop 6 damage counters when they attack, and that Blazing Destruction attack for 1 fire energy to discard a stadium is not bad as well. 3 copies of Pidgey, and unfortunately, it's the 50 HP Pidgey, which up until recently was the best Pidgey to play. It was the optimal one, because that Call for Family attack is really great for setting up our bench at the beginning of the game. However, in a post-Dusclops world where Dusclops can blow itself up and drop 5 damage counters on your Pokemon in any way you like, this Pidgey gets instantly blown up by that. So these days you want to run the 60 HP Pidgey instead. Even though it has a much worse attack than Call for Family, getting out of that Dusclops range is really important. The deck comes with 2 copies of Pidgeotto. Now, this is kind of a weird inclusion in the sense that currently we don't play Pidgeotto in current builds of Charizard with Pidgeot. However, we are in a post-rotation format where we don't necessarily have combos like Forest Seal Stone and Lumineon, Arven, all that. So it's going to be a little trickier to set up the Pidgeot. So we also have TM Evo in the deck, which we're going to get to in a sec. So if you're going turn 1 going second, you could could attach to whatever Pokemon you've got in the active and then evolve up to a Charmeleon and a Pidgeotto so that on the following turn it's easier to set up Charizard and Pidgeot. So in that sense, I don't necessarily hate the inclusion of Pidgeot or Pidgeotto in this deck. I would probably cut this down to 1 though, and maybe even consider taking it out entirely still. Pidgeot EX is an insane card. Its quick search ability lets you search your deck for any card in your deck and put it into your hand, and this has been absolutely massive in helping Charizard be a consistent deck. Now, sometimes you're going to want more than one card, and as you can see in this deck list, we don't have the Beedrill line or a Pheasantipity EX to draw extra cards, but Pidgeot is absolutely critical to the success of this deck, and I'm glad we get 2 copies of it here. Moltres is a little bit of a weird inclusion. Now, it might not be this one, but I'm almost certain it's this one because the other 2 Moltreses that are currently standard format legal are going to rotate in the 2025 rotation, and Pokemon does not like putting in cards that are going to rotate soon in their deck. So I'm almost certain it's this Moltres, which, I mean, it does give you a free retreat if this Pokemon has any fire energy on it, which, yeah, that might not be the worst, having a free retreater. Its attack is okay, I guess. For 3 fire energy, you can discard 2 energy and then do 120 damage to one of your opponent's bench Pokemon, giving you a little bit of a snipe attack. Maybe you can snipe out a Mimikyu, and that would be maximum value for a card like this, but competitive decks are not running this card at all. If you're going to take anything out of this deck, this is probably the first thing to go. 4 copies of Iono, one of the best hand disruption cards in the game where both players shuffle their hands, put it to the bottom of their deck, and then draw equal to the number of prize cards they have remaining. One of the nice combos here is that even if you shorten your hand by playing Iono, you can oftentimes just use Pidgeot to grab an extra piece that you need to continue your combo. Now, Charizard decks pre-rotation don't have 4 copies of Iono, but this is a post-rotation build where maybe Iono is a little more important, or at the very least, possibly more important than Arven in a post-rotation world. Now, Arven is an amazing card in Charizard, where you can search your deck for an item card and a Pokemon tool card, and then put them into your hand, and that was going to be your best way of setting up your Charizard and your Pidgeot, oftentimes in combination with a Lumineon or Rotom, along with Forest Seal Stone. Now, both of Forest Seal Stone, Lumineon, and Rotom are all rotating out, which is why they're not in the deck, which I suspect is why we're only getting 2 copies of Arven here instead of 3 or 4, which is what we normally see in a pre-rotation Charizard Pidgeot build. But Arven still a fantastic card. Glad to have a couple of copies of that here. Boss's Orders is our support-based gusting card. Get to switch your opponent's bench Pokemon into the active. This is really important for Charizard because your damage is a little wonky in the sense that it builds up over time, but especially in the early game, you want to maximize your the prizes that you take. And if you can knock out something like a Squawkabilly early on so that you can get a prize lead, then Boss's Orders can really help you snipe out those bigger targets on the bench, so you're maximizing each of your attacks. Professor's Research is a bit of an odd inclusion in the deck. Like, it's a phenomenal card, discard your hand, draw 7 cards, but Charizard decks aren't really running Professor's Research right now. That being said, again, this is a post-rotation list. Maybe we will see Professor's Research in the future, but I can't complain too much about it. Professor's Research in general is a fantastic card, and I don't mind it here in the context of this League Battle deck. Artazon is a very good stadium, lets you search your deck for a Pokemon, a basic Pokemon that doesn't have a rule box, and just put it onto your bench. Can really help with your consistency here. Now, competitive Charizard decks aren't really running Artazon right now, but I don't hate its inclusion here. It does make the deck better and more consistent, and I don't mind having it here, especially since there's no Nest Balls in this list, which some Charizard decks these days aren't running Nest Balls, but I personally like to have at least a couple in there. So kind of instead of Nest Balls, you've got Artazon, which is maybe not my favorite choice, but Artazon's still a good stadium and still a good stadium in this list. Buddy-Buddy Poffin is a fantastic win for this deck. You get to search your deck for up to 2 basic Pokemon with 70 HP or less and put them onto your bench. And that's going to get you your Charmanders on the board as well as your Pidgeys. Not going to get you stuff like the Moltres though you're probably going to throw out the Moltres as soon as you get this deck. But Buddy-Buddy Poffin is amazing for keeping Pokemon, keeping basic Pokemon on your board to evolve later. Rare Candy lets you evolve from your basic Pokemon straight to your stage 2. You can skip the stage 1. 4 copies of it is absolutely essential in Charizard, giving you the most opportunities to skip that middle evolution and get rolling on the second turn. 4 copies of Ultra Ball, phenomenal Pokemon search card. You discard 2 cards and grab any Pokemon of your choice. We've already talked about Prime Catcher, absolutely massive inclusion in the deck. Absolutely love that it is here. 1 copy of Super Rod lets you shuffle 3 in any combination of Pokemon and basic energy cards from your discard pile into your deck. Most Charizard lists actually run 2 Super Rod, though in this particular build, because you have so much energy in the deck, you might not need 2 Super Rod, but personally I would probably add 1 more Super Rod to this. 1 copy of Switch. This is a weird inclusion. Switch is not a bad card, right? Being able to move a bench Pokemon into the active is always good, especially if, say, a Charizard EX gets damaged and you can bring in a fresh one without having to discard the energy. There are use cases to justify having Switch. In particular, Charizard has a terrible Snorlax stall matchup, and sometimes they'll try and trap stuff in the active, and Charizard historically doesn't really run any sort of Switch cards, but Switch can help you out in those types of situations, and it's a good card to have whether you have it in Charizard or something else, so not the worst inclusion. TM Evo is a card that is not normally run in Charizard right now, but again, in a post-rotation world, TM Evo might be the way to get this deck rolling. So you'll want to go second, and you'll attach an energy to whatever Pokemon's in the active, and then you'll use this evolution attack to get a Charmander and a Pidgey evolved up to Charmeleon and Pidgeotto, or maybe it's 2 Charmanders into Charmeleon. Whatever the case may be, this is going to help you get set up so that on turn 2 you can go into your big stage 2s and draw a bunch of cards with Pidgeot or swing with Charizard. Defiance Band lets you do 30 more damage if you're behind on prizes. In particular, if your opponent's taken a prize and now you get to swing with Charizard while you're behind on prizes, instead of doing 210 damage, you're now doing 240 damage, which means you are one-hit KOing some of the bigger basics like a Roaring Moon EX, an Iron Hands EX, and even Raging Bolt EX, which has 240 HP. So Defiance Band in that regard is fantastic. And even towards the later game, you are going to be able to hit different breakpoints and swing for massive damage in scenarios where you wouldn't have been able to take instant KOs otherwise. So Defiance Band, great card in this deck. We also have 10 basic Fire Energy in the list. Now, 10 is a lot for Charizard. We usually have 6 to 7 Fire Energy. Of late, we've seen decks go as low as 5 Fire Energy, along with 1 double Turbo Energy for Radiant Charizard. But Radiant Charizard's not going to be in the format for much longer, which is why we don't see the double Turbo Energy or Radiant Charizard here. So I would definitely, if you're looking to upgrade the deck, cut this energy down a little bit to make room for other stuff. One of the cool things about Charizard is that you can tech the deck out in a lot of different ways. So by no means this is all of the cards that you would expect in a Charizard deck that aren't here. And some of these don't necessarily pair well together, like the Pecharunt EX and the Binding Mochi. These are great cards in a poison build of Charizard, but you wouldn't necessarily pair them with the Dusclops and the Dusknoir. So I'll just talk about some of the potential pieces you could add to your League Battle deck, or things that maybe aren't in the League Battle deck. So we'll start with the Dusknoir line, the Duskull, Dusclops, Dusknoir. They have that Curse Blast ability where they blow up and drop a bunch of damage counters. These are not in the deck, and I don't necessarily think they're essential. A lot of Charizard builds these days run it, but it's not, I don't think it's essential. Tord got 10th at Worlds and didn't run the Dusknoir line, so that should tell you a little bit of how necessary it is. I do think it's a really cool addition to the Charizard deck, though. So I would definitely consider adding those to your Charizard list when you're upgrading your League Battle deck when you get it. If you're going to play before rotation, some of the cards that you'll want to add there is Lumineon V, which helps you grab a supporter card of your choice from your deck. Rotom V helps you draw some extra cards at the beginning of the game. And Radiant Charizard can be a great sort of end game attacker or early game as well. So one of the cool combos that players came up with at Worlds is Radiant Charizard plus the double turbo energy. If you go first, on your second turn, you can bring Radiant Charizard into the active, use Charizard to put 3 Fire Energy onto Radiant Charizard, and then slap a double Turbo Energy onto Charizard so it can blow up a Regidrago V. So that's kind of a cool combo, but again, like even the double Turbo Energy is rotating out as well. So of these cards, Lumineon, Rotom, Canceling, Cologne, those are all rotating out. Bidoof and Bibarel, a nice secondary draw engine, that's rotating out. Radiant Charizard's rotating out. Double Turbo Energy's rotating out. Collapse Stadium, I believe, is rotating out as well. And then Manaphy to protect the bench. All of those cards are going to disappear with rotation, which is why they're not in the League Battle deck. Now, if you're going to be playing this deck before March to April 2025, you'll probably want to add them back in. Some other pieces that I kind of skipped over here since I'm jumping all over the place. The 60 HP Pidgey you'll definitely want to put into your League Battle deck and replace the 50 HP one so you're better protected against stuff like the Dusclops. Professor Turo Scenario is a really nice way of healing your Charizard where you'll just kind of scoop it up off the board and all that damage goes away with it. Forest Seal Stone is a phenomenal card, but again, that's rotating in a couple of months. So if you're buying this deck around the time it comes out, definitely add a Forest Seal Stone to your deck. Otherwise, yeah, don't worry about it. Counter Catcher is a really nice addition to the deck, especially since Charizard oftentimes falls behind on prizes. Unfortunately, didn't get any copies of it here, which isn't the end of the world, but would have loved to have seen Counter Catchers in this deck. Collapse Stadium is rotating, but that's a great way to bump out Rotom and Lumineon and Rotom. But in a world where we don't have Lumineon and Rotom, then maybe we wouldn't need Collapse Stadium anyway. Nest Ball, great for getting basics down, just in case you need some extra insurance to get your basics down besides Buddy Poffin. Cleffa is not really played as much anymore, but it's really great for drawing cards turn 1 going second. However, there are some issues. It's really easy to take out, especially now in a world where Dusclops is there, as well as Monkey Dory, both of which can take out Cleffa in the middle of a turn. Pheasantipity EX is probably going to be a staple card in Charizard going forward. After one of your Pokemon gets knocked out, you just get to draw 3 cards with its Flip the Script ability. Manaphy's not here to protect the bench. Rabsca and Relo are not there to protect the bench. So pre-rotation, you'll want to add Manaphy. Post-rotation, if you want to protect the bench, you'll want to use Rabsca instead. Pal Pad's really nice for being able to put supporter cards from your discard pile back into your deck. And then I was only able to put 1 A-Spec because Limitless's deck builder only lets you put 1 A-Spec in. But there are some other A-Specs you might want to consider as well, such as Hero's Cape and Maximum Belt and Unfair Stamp are also really good ones in Charizard. The Great Tree one could also work in Charizard as well. I've seen a couple of lists in Japan incorporate that A-Spec into their list. So lots of good A-Specs you could put into Charizard if for whatever reason you don't like Prime Catcher, or you're putting Prime Catcher in another deck of yours. Let's close things out with a couple of examples of competitive Charizard lists from the recent World Championships. Tord was the highest placing Charizard player, got 10th place. His list is a little more teched out relative to the League Battle deck. We do see that 1/1 line of Bibarel. He does have 1 copy of Pidgeotto here, which is nice. Only a 2/2 line of Charizard, which does kind of freak me out, but it is something I did see more in the Charizard list in Worlds this year. He does have the Rabsca in here to protect the bench against damage and damage counters on the bench. We also see that Pheasantipity EX. We still see the Cleffa in here. We also see a Squovit here, which is not rotating, and I don't necessarily think you're going to want to put this in post-rotation because it shuffles your hand, put it to the bottom of the deck, and then draw a card, and that doesn't really help if we don't have, with Bibarel going away, Squovit doesn't really help as much, so that's probably not something you're going to see in a Charizard deck post-rotation. Some of the other big things here, I think the big one here, Unfair Stamp, is a great A-Spec in general. So Tord has that in there. Otherwise, yeah, this is, I mean, you're getting a pretty good chunk of these cards already in the League Battle deck, which is really nice. And one more list here. This is Oscar Madsen's 35th place. There's a couple of other ones higher than Oscar, but I really like Oscar's list because it also includes the Dusk Noir line here, which I really wanted to show as a way of building out Charizard. Still also has that Bibro line, the Pheasantipity EX as well. And yeah, I think that's it. The two super rods, but mostly because Oscar also incorporated the Dusk Noir line, which is a really cool upgrade to the list. I know I've rambled a whole bunch about this deck, and we've gone into it in exhaustive detail, but I did just want to say that this deck is fantastic out of the box. You're getting so many good cards, a pretty functional Charizard and Pidgeot deck. You can trick it out pre-rotation, post-rotation with a couple cards here and there. I don't think it's too much effort to get it to like the maximum level, but relative to other League Battle decks, this might be the most complete one we've seen yet, and it's certainly one of, if not the strongest League Battle deck out of the box. And even as someone who once again, like, I've built a Charizard deck already. I haven't fully upgraded it to the most recent format. This was built for Twilight Masquerade. I'm probably still going to pick up this League Battle deck at bare minimum, right? If you need a Prime Catcher, it's probably cheaper to just buy the League Battle deck than buy a Prime Catcher for the same price. Now, I'm sure that with the League Battle deck coming out, Prime Catcher prices will probably come down at least a little bit, but the value proposition here is absolutely insane. Even if you're not just shopping for a Prime Catcher, this is an awesome deck to start with competitive play, and I cannot wait for this to come out later this year. But for now, I gotta get going. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know. Are you excited for this Charizard League Battle deck? Are you gonna pick it up? Let me know in the comments below. But for now, I gotta get going. Thank you so much for watching. You can find me on all the things: YouTube, TikTok, Twitter, and Instagram at @InThirdPerson. You can find me on Twitch at @InThirdPerson, where I will be back streaming the Pokemon trading card game every Sunday in the morning, usually around 10 a.m. Eastern time, if not earlier. And check out the website, inthirdperson.com, for more articles and videos on video games, board games, and other nerdy pursuits. So until the next one, I'll see you later. Bye-bye.